To get started, these are the materials I'm going to be working with. I've got my fabric here. It is an off-white silk fabric, and I've also got my medium strength interfacing and my pattern paper. Now we need to understand the component of a sun hat. A sun hat has a top part, the middle panel, and the brim. The brim is the very wild part of the hat, and the only measurements you need for this hat is your round head circumference measurement. Starting with the top part, I'm going to be dividing my round head circumference by 6.28. So 24 divided by 6.28 is 3.8. Also, I'm going to be folding my pattern paper into 4. Once I'm done with that, I'll go ahead and place down the measurements that I just got. So I'm going over to place down 3.8 inches. Once I'm through with that, I'll go ahead and connect, after which I would go over and cut this out. So this part would serve as the top part. Moving over to the middle part, I'm going to be dividing the round head circumference by 2. 24 divided by 2 is 12 inches. So I'm going over to place 12 inches down. Once I'm through, I would go over and draw in my line. So next thing I will do is to mark 4.5 inches upward. I would also mark it on the other line, after which I would connect the both points together, and it's going to give me a sort of a rectangle. Once that is done, I'm going to be coming upward by 1.5 inches, and I will also mark 1.5 inches from the base here too, and I'm going to be using my pattern master to create a curve at the base and also at the top part. Now the middle part of the sun hat has to be a little bit curvy but not so straight, so that's why I'm doing that. I'm also marking half an inch inwards from the edge there so that it doesn't appear pointed. So once that is done, I'll go over and cut this out, and this would serve as a pattern for the middle part. For the brim, I'm going to be needing the top part for the brim, so I'm picking up my pattern for the top part, and I'm going to be tracing the radius on a fresh pattern paper. Another alternative is to just mark your radius directly, but this would make your work faster, after which I would go over and mark my desired length plus my seam allowance. Everything adds up to 6 inches for me. Yours could be 10, it could be 15, depending on what you want. So I'm gone over to mark the points, and I've connected it all, and I'm going over to trim my pattern. So these are all of my pattern sets. This is the top part, and I would need to cut 2 pieces, one for the fabric and one for the lining. However, for this I'm using the same fabric for both the fabric and also the lining. For the middle part also I'll need to cut 2, and for the flare I would also need to cut 2 pieces. However, for the flare, when I want to cut, I would have to fold my fabric into 4 and cut, and I'm not going to be splitting the flare, so it's just going to be a single circle. For the middle part, I'm going to be cutting this part here on fold, and to all of these patterns I'm going to be adding seam allowances where appropriate. So these are all of my pattern sets. I've gone over to cut, and here is what I have. I have 2 pieces of the top part, okay, fully interfaced. I just thought to say that. I also have the middle part, 2 pieces, and I also interfaced it too. And for the brim, I also have my flare. You can see it's a full circle. I did not split it into 2. I have 2 pieces also fully interfaced. To proceed, I'm going to be starting with the middle part, and for that I would place right sides against each other, and I would go over and sew it down by seam allowance of half an inch, which was what I added, and I'll repeat likewise for the fabric that doubles as the lining too. this is what I have after I'm done with that. What I'll go ahead and do next is to create notches. I'm just going over to fold that middle part into two equal half, after which I would go ahead and use my scissors to create a notch. This would really help you when you want to fix the top part. Now, opening up the middle part, this is what I have. I can visibly see my notches, and also my crease line and seam line would also serve as a guide for me on the other ends of the middle part. So this is my crease line, and I also have my seam line right here. The next thing I will do is to pick one of the top parts, and as you can see, while interfacing, I've been able to create crease lines on the top part, and this would also serve as a guide. It would be the matching points for this heart. I'm just going to pick my top part and then match it up to one of the notches I have, and I'm matching it up to the crease line, which is serving as a guide for me. I'm going to be using my pin to place it together. I would pick the other end, the crease line, and match it up to the side seam where I joined the middle part together. Once that is done, I will also match up the other notches too. The next thing I will do is to go ahead and sew this all around. I will repeat likewise for the other pieces too. This is what I have after sewing it round. You can see that the shape of the heart is already forming. The next thing would be to join the brim to the base of the cap, and like I did before, whereby I matched up the crease lines and the notches together, I'm going to be repeating likewise for the brim also. So while ironing interfacing on the brim, I've also been able to create crease lines. I would go over and locate it and match it up to the middle part. Once that is all done, I would go over and sew this all around, and this is what I have after sewing. This is my cap pieces. One, the main fabric that will be on the outside, and the other one would be the lining. The next thing is to secure our raw edges. And how do I do that? I'm going to be placing right sides against each other. It doesn't matter which one you're placing, but make sure it is right sides against each other. Wear the cap properly, and after which I would go ahead and sew it along the brim. And while sewing, I'm going to be leaving like 2 inches opening where I'm going to be bringing out my heart from. This is what I have after sewing. This is the space I said I was going to be leaving, and I'm going to be bringing out my entire heart from that opening, from that space. Once that is done, I would set it up properly, after which I would go over and give this a very good press. I'm done ironing, and here's the heart. And for the opening, in order to properly secure it, I would go over and do a top stitch along the entire brim, and this would firmly secure that opening, and that would be the end of this tutorial. So guys, here is my cap. This is what it looks like on the outside, and also on the inside, this is what it looks like also. If you found this tutorial helpful, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, kindly click on the subscribe button below, and until my next tutorial, goodbye.